Good day, goblins. My name is Andy, aka Damp Cobra, part of Geek Curio. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for everyone who commented, watched, and liked my last two videos. And I am taking on some of the feedback and comments, so I'll try and do better. Only way is to improve, and I'll do the best that I can. And today, I thought we'd actually try putting some paint on some models today. So today we're going to be doing base coating. I've selected a few models to do this on. These are some Harley Quinn busts that I printed on my 3D printer last year. Now these are actually done in black resin, but we still will be putting a base coat on anyway. If anyone's painted miniatures before, you know it's always good to have a good base coat down in order to put normal paint over the top. It helps with the adhesion. I'm just going to put those there now. I've also got a Mandalorian figure as well. This one, again, printed on my 3D printer last year. Nothing has gone on that, so there's no paint on that whatsoever at the moment. So we'll get that all base coated up. And just so I don't have everything that is all black as well, I've selected a Reaper miniature. I got this as part of a Reaper miniature subscription box, which I had with Mighty Lancer Games. So a big shout out to you guys. Thank you very much for this. And I'm planning to show some zenithal highlighting, and I think this model will be good for that. Zenithal is where we have a light source that's coming down. So what we want to do is basically prime the miniature all black, and then gradually build up with lighter colours, a grey and then a white, and then using some dry brushing as well. What this does is it creates shadows and helps with the painting of your miniature as well. So this will be a good example of this. With the shield above, we should see shadows cast underneath the shield. Another good example of zenithal highlighting you're actually seeing right now with Harley Quinn. So there's actually a light source just above the camera here, and as you can see, this is already a black model, but you can see where the light is hitting it. Now what we're going to do is try and duplicate this effect, but with using paint and using the airbrush itself. So without further ado, let's get on with that. So I'm just going to quickly run through what I'm going to be using for this video. I'm going to be using this airbrush, which is just a cheap £12 airbrush that I got on Amazon. I say these are absolutely fine. I wouldn't consider myself an artist, so I'm not going to spend money on a £200 airbrush. However, I have been watching a YouTuber who is an artist and does fantastic things with his expensive airbrushes. So it's something that I would be considering in the future. But like I say, for basing, this does the job just well. I've also got a airbrush cleaner pot, which to be honest with you, works just well as a stand. Probably also noticed I've got a stand here as well, clamp stand that my daughter got me. This is fantastic for having other brushes at hand. And like I say, it clips to your table, so. But I'm not going to be using that because it's in my way for this video. Other things I'm going to be using, I've got Vallejo Surface Primer. This is black. And I'm going to be using that with airbrush thinner as well, so also from Vallejo. So I'm going to mix it up in the pot directly, and then we're going to spray it onto the miniatures. You will also notice that I am actually wearing a rubber glove. Reason for this is just purely personal preference. It can get messy, and I tend to attract disaster as well. So if I'm going to spill anything on myself, it's probably going to happen in this video. It's also useful as well because when mixing the paint, it's recommended to put your finger over the nozzle and push air through it, and that basically will mix the paint together. And there have been times where I've just made a bit of a mess. So it's also because I'm going to be holding the miniatures constantly, and I don't want to smudge the base coat. So first of all, I'm going to be starting off by putting a little bit of airbrush thinner in the pot, and then I'm going to be topping that up with black primer. I've already given these a good shake off camera, so you don't have to watch me doing that. I also carry around a cheap brush, one that I don't really care much about as well, and I just use that for mixing up. So I try to mix it up a little bit in the pot first before I go mad on the blowing air through it. And then, like I said earlier, just put finger over the top and just blow some bubbles. You can also test on my hand to see how well that's coming through. Now, personally, in my opinion, that's going through a little bit too slowly. So I'm just going to up the PSI on the airbrush by turning the knob. And yes, that's currently at 20 PSI, so I'm just going to wax it up to 25. And you can hear, yeah, it's doing a much better job now. Okay, so now I'm just going to be quiet and just spray these miniatures. So I'm just going to make a start on the Reaper miniature, and with this we want to get into every nook and cranny. Got to remember the black paint is going to be doing the shadows, so we want to have that in pretty much all directions. I do the Mandalorian now. I say we want to get this at every angle. Not so much saturated, but what we want is basically a nice, good, strong foundation base coat. Okay, so now everything's base coated and dry, what we're going to do now is create a light source. So our airbrush is going to be our light source. And just to give credits where credit's due, the technique, the zenithal highlighting technique I'm actually using is the same as another YouTuber called Dana Howell. I'm a big admirer of her work. I've seen her on Twitter way before she became a YouTuber as well, and have always been impressed with her use of the airbrush. So for the highlight, we're going to be using Vallejo French Mirage, and we're just going to mix it up the same way. Now, chances are this paint is going to be a little bit thinner than the primer, because basically, I mean, if you're used to Games Workshop paints, it's essentially going to be the same sort of consistency as one of the layer paints compared to the base coat paints. So again, I'm going to start off with my thinner first, and then I'm going to pour some paint in. Give it a good mix with the brush, which I cleaned off camera. Try to get right in the bottom as well, because the last thing you want is a blob of unmixed paint suddenly getting stuck in the nozzle. It'll just blow back, it'll splutter, it'll ruin pretty much everything that you've done. And then just blow some bubbles through it again, just to mix it up properly. As you can see with my hand, it's nice and black, so I can use this as a test piece to see how it's coming out. And that's kind of giving me the highlight that I want, which is good. With regards to mixing the paints, it really is going to be trial and error. You need to just try and get it so it's not spluttering. If it's too thin and the PSI is too high, it'll just splutter and it will leave a mess on your models. So I'm just going to make a start with this larger Harlequin. So what we're doing now, we're going to be hitting it at a 60-degree obtuse angle. I'm not too sure what that is. Just going to move the other miniatures out of the way. But what we're not going to be doing is going to be spraying up. So everything is going to be spraying down. So sometimes the easiest way to do this is to basically put the miniature flat on the table, hold this in one position, and just rotate with the other hand. Sometimes just moving up and down as you're rotating. And what you're looking for is a clean and consistent dusting of the model, essentially. And I'll just show you where I got to there. So, as you can see, the top of the model is actually darker than the bottom of the model. I thought I'd also share me doing it with the Reaper miniature as well. So, let's say, move her out of the way. Just going to put it base on the table, be consistent. So I'm letting the same amount of air out of the brush at the same time, and keeping the distance away from the model at the same time, and I'm just rotating at a nice constant speed. A bit awkward with the sword in the way, unfortunately, but you seem to be getting there. Okay, for the final highlight I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be using Vallejo Pale Sand. Now I've already mixed this up, and to be honest with you, I think it needs a little bit more thinner. The reason for this is because it's such a light paint, you tend to find that the pigment tends to be a lot denser, and therefore it's a little bit more thicker than usual. So before you start doing this stage, I recommend just testing out how it's coming out of the airbrush. Change the PSI if necessary. So that's a little bit too strong. Again, I don't want spluttering. And make sure it's coming out consistently. Okay, so I'm pretty confident it's well mixed now. What I'd say with this one is just go very, very slowly. Because like I say, if it hasn't mixed properly, you're just going to have a big lump of cream coming out, and it's going to ruin all the work that you've done before. So with this, like I say, this is a dual action airbrush. So when I push down, air comes out. When I pull back, the paint starts flowing through the air as well. So what I want to do is basically just do this very, very slowly. I'm also thinking about the angle as well. So whereas with the French Mirage, we did this angle, we're going to tighten this up a lot more, and it's going to be like as if the sun is right above the miniature. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're not doing so much, just enough to catch the edges of the miniature and create a good light source. So just to see the progress that I've done so far, I don't know how well you can see that, but basically that has managed to capture her hair and the top of the mask. It's also managed to capture just along the top of the her top as well. And I'm going to do that with some of the other miniatures as well. Remember, very, very tight angle, and keep your eye on the miniature. Just going to do the Reaper miniature now as well. And this one, like I say, hopefully we should really see the shadows coming out, because I'm going to be, he's hiding behind his shield, and this one should come out really well. You should be able to see the shadow of the shield on his face. And that is actually capturing the model quite nicely. I'm quite glad I picked this one. I'm just going to bring this up to the camera again, so hopefully you can see that, where the light has landed on his shield. And I'm probably going to have to take some photographs, but basically it's blocked the rays of the sun, or the light source, over his arm and side of his face. Okay, so let's have a look and see how these all turned out. So on the Reaper miniature, we can see that the underneath the shield is definitely a shadow, and we can see that cast on the face as well. There we go. So we can see that the light has actually caught quite well on the side of his face and also on his hair, but the shield has taken the bulk of the pale sand. You can also see it's reflected on the pauldron along the side here, and also on his arm, but there's definitely a shadow underneath the shield, which is what we want. Have a look at Harley Quinn next. And Harley Quinn, yes, I'm quite happy with this actually. It looks like quite a lot more has filled down here, more than I would have liked. But the next stage, as per Dana Howell's video, would be to do a recessed shade and also a dry brush as well with a much more brighter white, which I will do, but there's no point in me doing this video twice. So I quite like the shadows caught in the hair. This is the bad side of the model. This is the side I didn't really want to show you because this was an early 3D print which I used 2 heavy supports, but the front of it is actually quite nice still. Next we'll have a look at the Mandalorian. So with Mando, I'm actually quite happy with this. So I don't know how well you can see it on the picture, but basically what's happened is it's really caught the sharpness of the armour. So you can see along here where the pale sand has caught it, also on the shoulder pauldron, also things like the gloves, and also this arm which is exposed. Again, this is a very bad 3D print, so excuse the really bad support lines, but yeah, I'm quite happy with that, the way it's come out on the cloak. So I was planning on using this for a diorama that I'll be doing in the future, but I'm quite happy with that. So normally the next stage of this process would be to do a recess shade, using Nuln Oil, and also doing a small dry brush highlight as well.
I'm not going to do this in this video, otherwise it would literally just be a carbon copy of someone else's, and I don't particularly want to do that. However, why would I do this? Why would I do this sort of zenithal highlighting? Late last year, I started my own business, which was called Miniature Mutts, and I was basically painting people's dogs and putting them in snow globes. So I found that using inks was very, very good for painting dogs. And inks can also be put through an airbrush as well. But with the zenithal highlighting, I was getting a much more better result, especially as ink is very loose and transparent. And this type of highlighting was absolutely fantastic. I'll probably do a later video. I mean, I'm thinking about doing one about masking as well. So that's if you're masking off areas when you're airbrushing. And I think doing Harley Quinn would be quite a good one for that. So we'll do that with inks probably in the future. And I'll show you putting inks through the airbrush and how this works with this zenithal highlight effect. Thank you very much for watching. It's probably a longer video than I've normally done before, but we'll have a look at it in editing. Thanks for staying this far, and be safe. Bye.